building the audience and things like that. But it's, you know, something that obviously hasn't happened. You know, people might not be willing to fork out the money to buy a license, but I think it's definitely something that's missing in the market, particularly in Australia.
I agree, and I think supercars is it's taken off globally. Like it's got a lot of interest now. Yeah. So yeah, in my opinion, it would definitely work, but I don't understand all the intricacies of how to go about making games and all that, so I don't get it. So like you say, it's obviously some sort of licensing and things like that issue, and there's a reason why they're not. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it would just continue when they started it. So yeah, and
it was pretty popular. Like it seemed they had 3 games and they all, you know, seemed to sell pretty well. I mean, amongst even my friends, everyone seemed to have it on the Xbox or the PlayStation. So I think it's a shame, but I mean, we're seeing a lot of those, you know, IndyCar and a lot of those smaller categories, British touring cars, all starting to get video games again. So maybe that's something for supercars to jump.
It was Corsair who made the game. Oh, sorry, I'm opening Corsair Utility Engine at this. It was Codemasters, and they were doing Race Driver. And so the reason why it was such an easy thing to do in Australia is because they were making like 80 odd different category like of motorsport and selling it around the world. So like that's why everything was in it. That's why like NASCAR's in it. That's why DTM was in it.
I see.
Yeah, so they would in Australia it was branded as V8 Supercars, but it was actually Race Driver. It was just like the subtext name is V8 Supercars. But, and they would rebrand it all around the world differently. So in America it'd be like I don't know whether they called it NASCAR, but they called it something stock cars. In Germany they sold it as DTM.
That makes all that sort of stuff. It makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of different categories in the game now that you say that, right? There was a lot of
and tracks all over the world too.
We just never played it.
Like, I think like the first V8 Supercars that even opened with like a oval cinematic, if I remember correctly, of like some kid watching his dad die at a NASCAR race or something like that, and then he was a race car driver and you were playing as him, and he was American.
Oh, that's
racing supercars. So
I remember that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Really cool games. The third one was awesome. I loved the third one racing at the Indy, the Gold Coast now Gold Coast 600, the old track though.
The old track was unreal.
Yeah, such a cool game.
It was unreal. I was watching Albert Park the other day and I was actually jealous. I was like, you know, that's one of my favourite tracks to drive around. I love Albert Park.
Yeah.
But that old Indy track was something else. That was unreal. Yeah.
They need to go back to that old layout, because I was watching, it wasn't the supercars race, but I was actually watching an old IndyCar race there. And at that back section, they're just missing a little bit too much there now. What did you make of the new Albert Park layout, though?
I wasn't there, but on TV it looked pretty good to me. Seeing people on Facebook and that talking about being down on that, I think it's turn 9 chicane. They reckon the cars were just coming so fast.
Yeah.
And it's good because, you know, I think they were hitting 320, the Formula One cars or something like that. It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
There was that one pass when Perez went, I think it was around Hamilton, and I thought he had the DRS. He went around him so easily. Yeah. And then someone was in our chat and they said, nah, DRS wasn't even activated then. I was like, no way. Like that's probably one sort of example of how good that new section was just for the overtaking.
Yeah, but I think it also shows how bad that Mercedes engine is right now. Like it's significantly
it's got some downforce issue that they're losing speed with. I'm not sure if it's actually the engine or if it's downforce. It's something's upsetting the car.
But it's
Tristan's what?
He's waiting to be accepted.
He's waiting to be accepted.
I've just added him in now.
Hey, how are we all?
Hey, go, mate.
Thanks, mate. How you going?
Thanks for joining us.
Good, thank you. Good, thank you. Is my sound coming through all good?
Very well.
Coming through fine.
Yeah, awesome.
All right,
so we've got simulators and trophies and helmets, China and helmets, drum set. Amp, what are you going to put in there?
I've just got a blurry background.
I like it.
If I went unblurry, it would actually have my my clothes rack behind me, so I think I'll keep it blurry.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's begin.
Let's start proper, boys. So we've got the Ellery racing team, the Ellery family on tonight. So boys, thanks for jumping on to have a chat with us. We always appreciate it when we've got the races on, racing families that we get to have a chance to talk to. So thanks for, making the time on your Monday night to sit around and shoot it with us.
Thanks for having us, honestly. We're really happy to be on board.
Awesome. So like I was saying before to Steve, we kind of I kind of just stumbled across you guys on social media with the launch of Ellery Racing Team. So, I mean, something seemed to work. I mean, you're getting exposure in that regard, which is really good. But I thought there would be a really interesting conversation to be had, obviously about, you young guys trying to make it, up the categories, and to make a career as a racer, but then obviously to also get the insight and the experience from Steve, who's been there, who's done that, who's your father, and kind of see the juxtapositions between what the the motorsport journey was like 20 years or so ago, and what it's like now. So I hope we can have a really good, discussion about what that looks like. But just to kick things off, we'll start pretty easy. We'll go around the room. What are your earliest motorsport memories?
Who do you want to start? Dad, I reckon.
We're just going age.
Look, no one wants to jump in. I'll jump in. Obviously, watching Dad race around the supercar circuit, my brother and I were both, babies. So it was pretty cool to be a part of. We eventually got to grow up into go-karts. We had, I think, 15 or 16 years in karts and decided to make the jump across the cars. So for Dalton and I, that's been sort of our journey. We've raced across the national circuit since we were, I think, pretty much 8 years old in go-karts. So It's been a really cool journey, and obviously getting to watch Dad, race cars at some of the coolest locations and some of the coolest cars in the country. So
how much of your dad's career do you remember? Like, do you have, memories that you can kind of, think about? Or was it something that was really visceral for you, or you were still too young to really understand the gravity of it?
Yeah, I always remember Bathurst being pretty pivotal in my mind, especially when, towards the later stages of Dad's career, we were a bit older and appreciated it a bit more. But, I always remember the parade laps, doing that around Bathurst. I think we did it around Australian Grand Prix a few times as well. So, just being around that environment was always pretty cool to be a part of. But, yeah, I mean, look, we were young, so I probably I didn't take it for granted as enough, I should say, but it was a really cool childhood to grow up in, yeah.
And what about from your perspective, Steve, having two, obviously, young boys that you could take to the races with you to share those experiences with you? Did you kind of, at the time, realize the significance that it would have on their life?
I guess when you look at motorsport, it seems to become a bit of a family affair. I think it's one of those things that when it's in your blood, it stays in. But, my wife and I, Kerry, we had our kids young. So I was about 21, I think, when Dalton was born, and it was only 15 months later when Tristan was born. So I actually remember her having two babies on the plane, bringing them to a race once on her own. So they were at the track from when they were babies. So there's parts of that they wouldn't remember. But there's a lot of parts that they wouldn't. We've got a lot of photos, there's a lot of video, there's a lot of things that we've got that are great memories of those days as well. But I think it's just one of those things, once you're at the track, the kids see what you do. I think they're inspired by it. And it's just, ever since they were young, it's always been something that they've wanted to do. So yeah, definitely they got the bug from then. Yeah, absolutely.
If you were taking them to the track as babies, mate, they would have thought that's just normal life. That's why they want to do it.
Yeah, well, pretty much. They
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Dalton? Same as Tristan?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, we were reminiscing about this just on the weekend past, actually, because the Formula One was on in Melbourne, and yeah, some of the earliest memories I remember. My birthday weekend used to be on the same weekend as the Grand Prix was on. So I'm born at the start of March, and it used to be at the start of March. And I used to always have my birthday there, and I remember like that particularly because I remember walking across the racetrack to go and watch Dad, and you'd hear the bloody V10s off those F1 cars going howling down the streets, and all the echoes resonating down. It was the most incredible thing, and I'm glad that I've got that memory because that sound is just something that you can just never replicate. And that, I think, honestly, thinking back, that's probably my earliest memory of motorsport. I don't know how old I would have been, no clue, but that was the one thing that stuck with me forever, is just the sound of those cars, and not even being able to see them, but just walking across the road to the racetrack, from the hotel to the racetrack, and just hearing that sound and just the echo through the streets of Melbourne, and just how it bounces back in the reverb. It was just incredible. It makes me excited just thinking about it. And yeah, I knew then that, man, I want to race cars one day. That's cool.
I was having that conversation literally on Friday with someone at work, because I just had the practice on a side screen while I was at work, and someone kind of said, what's so special about like the Formula One? And there was another person there that had been to the F1 in the past as well. And I said, when you walk to the track, whether it's Friday or Saturday, Sunday, and they've got just the demo car going around doing laps, that whole, echo and reverb that you hear through the city, it just sends a shiver down your spine. And even now I was, just thinking about it, and it just kind of takes you straight back to that place. So it definitely is a really special memory, and one that's hard to forget. But Steve, I'll come back to you. So you hear a lot of these current racing drivers, Mark Winterbottom comes to mind, and David Reynolds also talking about how expensive motorsport is, and how they would hope that their kids find a cheaper sport to invest their time into. But was that just never the option for you? Just based on obviously your passion and the kids just being pretty much indoctrinated into it?
It's a funny story. Dalton asked me, I don't know, look, I can't say when he first spoke, but pretty much when he could talk, I want a go-kart for my birthday. Yeah. And I said, well, you can't, mate. I said, in Australia, you can't start racing until you're 7. So that's like, I think it was about 4 years away or something. So I guess my plan was, by the time he was 7, he will have got that out of his system and he won't want the go-kart. Well, I think every birthday he asked me. So that was just natural. And we ended up buying the go-kart and took him out there, and he just was oozing talent pretty much straight away. So, yeah, look, motorsport's a very expensive hobby, pastime, job, whatever you want to call it. And it does cost a lot of money to do it. And that's just a fact. So, yeah, like Dave Reynolds and those guys saying that they hope that their kids find something, like maybe go and buy a tennis racket or something and push the kids into tennis or something. But I'm afraid to say it's just like Dalton had said, and Tristan, growing up at the track, it gets in your blood. You only have to look at Jet Johnson and Nash Morris and even Steve Johnson and Steve Richards, and the list goes on. All sons. That's just natural. That's the way it is. So what I could say to those boys is just get ready and get your checkbooks out.
Start saving their pennies early. But with that being said, obviously the two young fellas moving into the motorsport career, there's obviously a reality to the sport as well. And as you progress up, it does get more difficult with things like that. Is there like a contingency plan in Dalton and Tristan's minds? You can probably speak to this. If the racing career just comes to a natural end, or if you can't move any further in the career, is there do you guys have like a second option that you're working on, that you've kind of studied for, or that you're even considering, or is it all racing?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I went to uni. I went the uni pathway as well. So I got my criminology degree. That was great, but I actually never used that. I've been in and out of hospitality. I recently just got out of that and started focusing on my career, and I'm now doing logistics for a big tire distribution company. So that's sort of like my plan B, my backup, in terms of what I can do just in case this doesn't work, because I think in every professional scenario you need to have a plan B, because things can go wrong at any moment. So it's really important to have that.
What about yourself, Dalton? Is that kind of the same for you?
Yes and no. At the moment, I'm actually not working. So I think like in the current sort of with how much racing I've sort of undertaken, it's just quite hard to find a job with someone else when so much time is going away racing, or preparing to go racing, or practicing. It's one of those things that you just require a lot of time. So yeah, but in terms of what like happens if racing comes to a stop, I actually spoke to Tim Slade. It would have been a year or two ago now. I don't know how long ago, and at the time he had lost his drive, and he was just talking about how much he went to a racetrack and took advantage of the situation and enjoyed his experience, and rather than just focusing so much on like the competitive. So everybody's competitive. But him and I spoke, and he was basically just telling me how, like, you just got to enjoy yourself. And so that's something that I actually really did think about. And it's something that I take with me now everywhere I go is enjoy yourself. Like, just take it for what it is, because it isn't forever. It's never going to be forever. No one races till they, get bloody 80 years old. Some people do, but not at like a high level. So, and it is expensive, and it's not getting cheaper. And so it could end tomorrow. Who knows? Like, who knows what happens tomorrow? And so yeah, it's just one of those things where you just got to go away, and you've sort of just got to take it for what it is. Enjoy it with who you're there with. Like, I get to race and go away racing with my family who have done it before. Get to enjoy those experiences. Have someone who's been there, done that, mentor me my whole life. I've got Ralph Bellamy as an engineer, and like learning from him and talking to him is just the most enjoyable experience. Like, the knowledge that he passes down and what we talk about and how he explains things, it's invaluable, and it's a life experience, and it's something that is just, no matter what happens tomorrow, I will take with me forever, wherever I go. And yeah, it's great to be doing it, honestly. It's just, yeah, it's good.
And you can probably speak to this as well, Steve. What skills, particularly when you obviously have to go racing, and there's the reality of constraints that you're obviously put within, there's pressures, etc. What skills from a racing career are transferable to any other industry that you move into?
Look, just about everything. Look, the driver, the way I've always looked at being a driver is that, at the end of the day, you're the one that goes and straps yourself into the car. So you're the one that's on the line. Everyone else that works for you, they're with that as well. But so it's your responsibility to make sure that everything on the car's done, everything's right, and you're comfortable to go and strap yourself into it without any issues of anything going on in the background. So, I think you're across every facet of the race team, because you just have to be. Yeah. And I think when you move into business life, like now I run the family business Chelgrave, and I've been doing that for 6 years. What I learned in motorsport's invaluable, and the other part about being a race car driver is you have to learn to think fast, think on the spot, and drop negative stuff straight away. So, and that could be a mistake. You might make a mistake into a corner, and at a track like Bathurst, the next corner's coming up very fast, and you can't dwell on that mistake. So you've got to have the ability to be able to drop it, move on, concentrate on the next scenario, and then you'll get to a point where you get to the straight and you can go to yourself, okay, what happened on that corner? And so, definitely helps you with thinking on your feet. What's the word I'm looking for? There's definitely a process.
Like proactivity.
Yeah, and being proactive. Absolutely. And it certainly teaches you that.
I might add to that if I can. I think with the sport, like the way that it is, everything happens so fast, like Dad said. I played rugby, basketball, whatever else, done athletics, all that. But in my opinion, the most competitive sport and most competitive environment I've ever been around is motorsport, motor racing. And because everything's happening so fast, you're looking for micro tenths in some cases to try and find a better time. And in my opinion, there's no other sport quite like it, in terms of, how quick you have to be on your feet and your responsiveness to, some serious situations that might be happening. I don't probably think about that as much when I'm working and whatnot. Like, what has motor racing taught me? But it's definitely taught me a lot of, lifelong lessons in terms of, networking, shaking the right hands, always being polite and respectful to other people. Because you're always on show, and that's, you know, echoed throughout your professional working life as well. So motorsport's definitely been, you know, instrumental in teaching me some of those behavioral characteristics as well.
If I can add to it as well, like when both Dalton and Tristan and myself started in go-karting as a young kid, one thing that happens at a go-kart track is you could be 7 or 8 years old, but your engineer or the guy working or your mechanic working on your go-karts could be 40, 50, 60, 30, 20. And so you learn as a young kid to have relationships with people of different age groups. You know, the one common aspect that we all have is we all love racing.
Yeah.
We come from a variety of different backgrounds, and not many of us are the same people, but we all get along because we have this common goal, and you learn that respect to different age groups as a young kid. I think that's really important.
Yeah, 100%.
With the go-karting, it's obviously, I mean, the reality is that, I mean, I do a bit of go-karting as well, and you've got these kids that are racing, but they're really racing in a man's sport, and everything around them is you know, uber professional, even from a fairly young age. But something that I thought was pretty interesting, and you know, you'll be at the track on maybe a Saturday practicing, and you start talking to a parent or a father whose kid's racing in the Australian Karting Championship, and every father's more than happy to tell you how good their son is, how good they are competing against some well-known names, and how they could be even better if they had the same scenario as some of those races, you know, of sons who have done this, or, you know, everybody's got a story, and you kind of just nod and agree and then walk away and say, you know, you just think to yourself, okay, maybe it's not that easy. But from your point of view, there's obviously, I think there can be a misconception that, you know, ex-racers kids have it easy moving up the ranks. But a lot of people don't realize the effort that it took, number one, for the racer to get to where they were, and then obviously to do it again with their kids. Can you guys like speak to that? Have you had any scenarios or, you know, issues where you've obviously had to deal with the expectation of being the son of someone well-known and going into their industry?
Yeah, well, for me, when I was growing up in karting, I felt that I was the victim a lot to people targeting me because, you know, dad was a supercar racer. You know, I grew up in a time like Aaron Seaton raced as well. A few of the other guys that had, you know, dads that raced supercars as well. So, you know, I've always felt like we were the same sort of profile in terms of we had a big target on our back. But at the same time, we had a really, you know, well, I'm trying to think of the right word, you know, a really knowledgeable and experienced guy in my dad who's been there, done that. And I know I probably didn't when I was younger, but when he spoke, I tried to listen. But I mean, like I said, the more I matured, the more I grew up, the more I started to understand that, you know, hey, this game's pretty difficult. Dad might know a thing or two, and whenever he opens his mouth, just shut your mouth and listen. And I can see Dad laughing, but you know, when you're young, you think you know everything, and I don't know, it's a tough game. It's really tough. Like I said before, you're looking in most instances for a 10th, which is less than a blink of an eye. So, you know, trying to close that gap to some of the good guys in front of you can be pretty hard, especially because you're an Ellery and everyone wants to beat you up on track. They don't want, you know, you to have it easy.
Yeah.
I'd like to think I didn't have it easy in karting. I had, you know, I got beaten up probably more than most. I did probably my fair share of beating up too, and, you know, ending up on the sidelines going like, why me? But, you know, the more you mature, the less you put yourself into positions where you can be targeted.
Yeah. Really interesting. So
I don't know if you guys, if you guys have thought about this as well. One thing that I've sort of picked up with all you young fellas we've spoke to when coming through racing is that you guys speak like with a maturity well beyond your years. I don't know if you guys notice, because you're always surrounded by people sort of in this game, and like you know from a young age that racing is expensive, you know, that you need to have good connections, you know, it's like probably of all the sports to do, it really is probably the biggest team effort in terms of the people who you don't actually see doing so much work for you. I don't know if you guys even noticed, because everyone in your position is probably the same way, but from like an outside looking in, it always Well, I think for myself, like, because I see you guys, and I'm like, man, I wish I was that mature when I was like 20, like spoke that well when I was 21, like showed that like sort of presence of mind and foresight that we hear you guys speak with. Like, it really is like testament to you guys. But do you guys notice that with the sort of group that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that, first of all.
That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some aspects, because we have so much, I suppose, attention on us, I wouldn't say we mature quicker, but I think we understand the game a bit more. Like I said before, you know, it's all about networking. It's about who you know. It's meeting the right people, shaking the right hands, and you know, if you're, I guess, carrying on like a spoiled brat in front of all those people or in front of the cameras, you know, that you're not going to get anywhere, and you're never going to get anywhere in life doing that either. You know, you just got to handle yourself with maturity and professionalism, especially if you want to attract the big sponsors. I think that all plays a big part in it, you know, and Dad, I'm sure, has got some stories of, you know, being pulled into line and told this is how you're going to make it in cars and this is how you're not.
Yeah.
What are some of those stories, Steve?
How about the earring? The earring.
Yeah, the earring.
He always tells me that he turned up. I think it was in Formula Fords or something, and he had an earring in or something, a punk earring. It was what was in apparently back in the 80s, and somebody came over and told him, if you ever want to make it as a race car driver, you take that bloody thing out right now.
Yeah.
I think times have changed though, because Chas Mostert's rocking up with blue hair these days. I mean, anything's possible.
Well, he is also Chas Mostert. I don't think Tristan Ellery would get away with that, but
he didn't have it when he started, that's for sure.
I was a little bit rebellious as a young kid, I have to say. You know, there was a stage I went through where I wore all black, and I had the big cross hanging out the ear. I don't know what I was doing and what I thought. But I actually drove Formula Ford. I moved to a team in Sydney called Phoenix Motorsport under Mike Quinn. It was at the time running that team. And it was him that said to my parents, I'm going to get Steve one night when he's asleep and I'm taking that bloody thing out of his ear. Eventually it wore on me and I ended up taking it out. And I think from that moment onwards, things definitely started to get better for me. I started to see that there was an image and, you know, there was a way to present yourself. And, you know, I had to get a lot of media training and things back in the day too. But, you know, I was just quite fortunate that I actually listened, took the advice and started to work on myself and my attitude as well, I have to say. I was a pretty fiery young fella.
I reckon you could bring that cross earring back to Bathurst and start a trend up, I reckon.
If we win, I'll go and stab
bring it for the podium.
I think you're going to be here first. If we win, he's getting
here first.
Just to elaborate on that as well, I think like something that a lot of people don't really notice is that it is a sport. And I think like a lot of people seem to forget that. Like, yeah, there's a certain entertainment aspect to it, but I think there's a lot of people out there that cop a lot of criticism for the things that they do and the things that they say, especially when they're in the moment. And I think that they forget that it is a sport and it is competitive and they are there to win that sport. A lot of people, I'd say like the 99.9% of people that go racing, they don't do it to become famous. They don't do it to end up on TV or have their name on a magazine or anything like that. They do it because they want to go and win championships, trophies. There's a competitive nature to people. And when they get into that bug of motor racing, that's what they want. There's only one thing that they go there to do. They wouldn't go there to come second. And so, yeah, when you get like that second thing on, it can be really difficult. And I think like it's just something that you sort of learn with time and with experiences. And, you know, there's certain times where you make mistakes and all that, and you have to just learn from it, really, isn't it? So, yeah, it's difficult, but
definitely
it's just,
a good point.
Maybe you could sort of answer this one then, Steve. How hard is it when you have had a bad weekend, but you do have like media commitments? And because in some ways you're a driver, but then also when you're not driving, you sort of become like an ambassador for your sponsor, or even just like a little bit of a walking billboard for your sponsors. Like they still want you to go to functions, and, you know, like you said before, you have to drop your sort of if you're feeling bad after a bad race, you have to drop that quick and be laughing and smiling and, you know, giving people sort of the best version of you. How hard is that to sort of turn on, off and on, or do you get better with that with time and practice?
I got really good at it with time and practice.
Yeah.
Look, that's really difficult. It's really difficult at times because things happen, and you're not always the happiest version of yourself at a racetrack. You can sometimes wish that you were anywhere else but there. But at the end of the day, the truth is you're not there if your sponsors aren't on board with you.
True.
And so, you've got to turn up. There's no other way of saying it.
Yeah.
And it's you don't go and plaster on a fake smile and get through the night. You genuinely go there because these people are your biggest support base, and they're there to support you. And so you've got to go there and support them as well. I think sometimes, and I always think back about this, is we used to get a little bit caught up in the, people that ask, you've qualified 22nd. How do you think you're going to go tomorrow? Oh, I still think we've got the car that can win it.
Yeah.
I think, hindsight says to you, I think we've got a car that might be able to get us towards the top 10 or something like that. But, like Dalton just pointed to, everyone wants to win. And you look at my stats, and look, I had a great career, and I had some podiums at Bathurst and Sandown and things. But my career was spent, like you said, most days, you question yourself. Your confidence does get belted. You have hard days. But like I say, at the end of the day, with your sponsors, and let's look at that. Like, I had a sponsor, Konica, who I had for
right.
many years. And I had a fantastic relationship with those guys. And there was never a time when I went to a function or anything with those guys where I didn't want to be there. Maybe personally, you'd probably prefer to be back in your room in the quiet where no one's asking you questions about your day. But it's important that they know what's going on. It's important that they see what's going on with you. And it's important that you show some of that passion.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing as well sorry to interrupt. I think it's a good thing as well in those situations where you do talk about, even if you had a bad day, you sort of get it out. It's a way of expressing yourself. I know when I was down at Tasmania, we had an absolute shocking day on the Friday. And I was asked some questions that afternoon, and it was actually felt better getting it out of your system and talking about it, and having that sort of positive outlook, because you sort of, in a way, when a camera's in front of you, you've got to be positive. If you're negative, It's not a good look. So when you look at it from a different perspective and you get that out, it actually can be a really reinventing thing for you, and you actually do feel better about yourself, and you a little bit more confidence too. So in that sense, I think it's a positive as well.
It's like race car confession.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Get it out straight away.
Yeah.
Even from a personal view, I mean, I dabble in a bit of just social go-karting and club days and things like that, and you can have an absolute shocker of a day. I mean, every race something happens, or you screw up yourself 100 times. But at the end of the day, you're frustrated, you're upset. But the reality is, even though it's the worst day, there's one thing that you can kind of cling towards, whether it's a PB or whether it's a pass that you made really well. Those days, you're doing what you love, you're racing, you're happy just to be out there at the track. And even on the worst day, normally there's something that you can kind of latch onto and say, that was something that I can build from moving forward. So it's not always just the doom and gloom of the result that we see. But what I wanted to kind of move into now was a little bit of the production car side of Ellery Racing, and kind of you've got the Bathurst 6 hour coming up this week, and I'm a relative noob to production car racing, so I just had a few questions to obviously ask you guys. But just to begin with, obviously, I don't know how long Ellery Racing has formally been in existence for. I've seen the socials come up, obviously, more recent times. But what's the goal of the team? Is it obviously to provide a platform for you guys to go racing and move up the ranks? Is it a platform, for you as a family to, enjoy the experience of racing together? So can you just elaborate on how you guys see the team and obviously its relationship to the family?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, well, it started out as Ellery Brothers Racing, because at the time Dalton and I were originally going to just be racing. And, when Dad came on board, it couldn't be Ellery Brothers Racing because it just didn't make any sense. You know, you can't be Ellery Brothers and there's that background, you know, but
could have been Ellery and Sons though.
So it's a bit of everything, to be completely honest. Everything you just said, you know, in terms of it's a chance to get our Ellery name back into motorsport, where it belongs. You know, like we said, Dad had an illustrious career in supercars and motorsport in general, and you know, the Ellery name deserves to be among some of the greatest because we think that's where it belongs. It's a chance to grow as a family. It's a chance to grow, you know, individually as well in terms of, you know, I guess our growth on social media and that. It's a chance to not only showcase to everyone what we can do, but also to give back to our fans who support us, our family, our friends, everyone who's, you know, tuning in on a race weekend, keeping them up to date. And, you know, I guess at the end of the day, we go racing to win, but we also go racing because we love it. And we know that other people love it and we make them happy when we do it too. So we get to share our journey of winning and losing as a family with the world, I guess.
I particularly have enjoyed, I mean, you've started doing the vlogs on YouTube.
Yeah.
So there was the vlogs of the Phillip Island round in Trans Am, and I think they're really good. Like they're short. You get a bit of in-car footage in, and obviously the review after the race. But I think for fans, any chance they get to kind of go behind the scenes and put a face to the name, or to kind of feel a little bit more invested in the team, it's always a good thing. So from that point of view, and I wrote a note here that your socials, like you've really done a good job kind of connecting with your fans, and, you know, everything that you're doing, even the promotional video that you guys put together with the production coming, everything is, you know, from a fan's point of view, it gets you excited for the team. It gets you excited for the things that you're doing. So like, I'd never had any interest in following the Bathurst 6 Hour before, purely out of ignorance, like not because I wasn't interested, but just out of ignorance. But I kind of saw your social page, and, you know, I was kind of realized that you guys were going to be racing in the event. And every time, you know, an article comes up on motorsport.com about the Bathurst 6 Hours, you know, there's a lot more interest on, you know, taking the time to read them and stuff like that. And that's purely from that promotional video that you put together. So there's something is working. And I think you guys should be commended for that.
I think to answer your question as well about the production car and what the idea was for that, at the time, we weren't doing any racing. So I stopped karting in 2017, halfway through a season. I was just burnt out, honestly. I was over it. Karting's changed a lot through the years. I'm not going to go on a rant about it, but it wasn't the same as what it was years before. And honestly, just, took a 4-year break of motor racing. And my granddad came to me one day, Bruce, and he said to me, do you want to go out to Norwell and have a go in a 86 out there? I'm like, yeah, bloody oath. All right, no worries. It was a rusty day, but that was the worst decision I think he's ever made in his life. Let's put it that way. And then, we went and had a go in an Exxon, my brother and I, at the start of 2020 before all this other crazy stuff happened. And then that didn't work out very well. We weren't really big fans of that. So we've known Berwick as a family for years. Steve has, Bruce has, and it was a no-brainer to go through them if we were going to go on production cars. We were pointed in that direction by the guys out at Norwell, and we went out for a test day out at Morgan Park in the M3, and honestly, that was the most impressive day. I didn't think that those cars were that quick.
We fell in love.
Yeah, I've got the picture of it right here on my side screen. You might be able to see the back of it. But honestly, it blew me away because I never realized that those cars were that quick. And like you're doing 280 down Conrod, like on tires that are basically rocks so hard. They're weapons. They are really quick. And now that I'm doing TA2, I get asked a lot, like, am I done with production cars? Am I going to go back to it, or is it just going to be TA2? What's going to happen next year? And honestly, I love the M3, and if it was up to me, I would never get out of it. I can't wait to be back into it again next week. When we did the test day out at QR a few weeks ago, I honestly didn't sleep the night before. I was so excited to get back in that car. It is the most enjoyable thing to drive. It is so much fun. They are, especially on the MRF, they are genuinely exciting and fun to drive. They are supremely challenging on that tire, but it is the best fun you'll have. Like, they are so So good.
I think Dad regrets answering Beric's call in regards to, hey, do your boys want to come and do the test drive in the BMW out at Morgan Park? Because realistically, that's what got us here. You know, we sort of saw XLs as sort of a pathway out of go-karts, but XLs wasn't for us because of the environment that we were in. So Dalton and I, we were pretty content to probably be done with karting, or be done with racing, I should say, sorry. And if it wasn't for Beric throwing us that lifeline, we wouldn't be having the sort of, you know, lifestyle that we're having right now. We get to go race at Bathurst this weekend with, you know, in my point of view, with my dad and my brother. My nan and pop are going to be there. They're going to be watching us on the balcony of their probably suite up at the ridges there.
That's it.
Yeah, they're going to be having a great time. You know, we got a lot of supporters that are behind us this weekend, and this is just sort of the life that we never really expected. But you know, we're not looking to get rid of it anytime soon. We love the production car racing. We love the opportunity to go racing around Bathurst. And we love being able to go racing as a family. And like I said before, that the coolest part about it all is, you know, yeah, okay, everyone wants to go and win, but we get to win and lose doing that with Ellery on the window, which I think is by far the coolest part of it all. And it's a lifelong dream for Dad. He's always spoken about doing some sort of endurance race with, you know, my brother and I, and having the opportunity to do that sort of seemed a little bit grim, but production cars allows that to happen in the Bathurst 6 hour and in the Australian Production Cars Championship this year as well. They're going a bit more endurance based. So gives us all an opportunity to race as a family and, you know, do what we really set out to do. And that's exactly that.
Here's a question I've got for you about racing as a family. Just quickly. So how competitive are you guys like in between each other? Because we did a 24-hour go-kart race and like as a family, so there was 5 of us, or 6 of us, but 5 brothers. And we have one brother who's like a firecracker, and he was going out in the 3rd last stint. And what was he? Oh, that's right.
He didn't want to fuel
the tank because he wanted to get the fastest lap of the day. So we filled up the tank. Yeah, we filled up the tank, and he did his stint. And then I went out, and by the time I got off, came back in, he was gone because he had done his last stint, and he had the shits that we were sabotaging his lap times.
Oh no!
I was after like 22 hours, and then this week he was saying to us, "Man, I love that 24-hour race we did." We said, "Dude, you only did 22 hours, then you buggered off." So like,
I didn't even save the checkered flag.
No, he didn't even save the checkered flag, and we came second because there was only 2 karts in our division. But like, so how are you guys going to be in terms of like a family unit? Are you going to be competitive, going for the fastest time between each other and stuff like that?
Yeah, we're always pretty competitive. Between the 3 of us, we all actually used to race each other in go-karts in a class called Open Performance. So we all had the high performance go-karts with the gearbox karts, and
I used to beat them all the time.
Oh, okay. And then he woke up. No, we're pretty competitive. Dalton and I, obviously being a similar age, we grew up doing the same things. You know, it's pretty cool as well to have a dad that's young enough to be able to, you know, grow up with us, I guess. So like I said, you know, Dalton and I grew up playing rugby and basketball sometimes, and obviously the go-karts were always there. So we were always relatively in the same classes because we were the same age. So, I mean, look, he had a better karting life than me. He beat me a lot more than I beat him, but we were so competitive. He was always the guy in front of me that I wanted to beat. And you'd think that we'd want to, you know, work together and be a team and try and beat the rest of them. But for us, I think it just mattered about us beating each other.
That's awesome.
Please, before
bragging rights.
Yeah, bragging rights.
That's exactly it. Well, we're triplets, so we understand the
triplets. Bloody hell!
We understand the whole competitive dynamic of.
Mate, we've got nothing on you guys.
So we used to race like BMX, and that was competitive, and then well, Joe and I did go-karts for a bit before he dropped out, and like everything has always been competitive, where it's soccer, scoring goals, it's kind of the whole thing. But obviously I've got a few questions about production cars, but before I go into that, I'm going to open what seems to be a pretty sore wound because it just seems too good to let go of. But I mean, there's a lot of, anyone that's in karting knows the issues. Like there's a love for it, but there's obviously issues with it as well. So without giving you too much post-traumatic stress, by the time that you guys started feeling that burnout from the sport, you know, what were some of the contributing factors to that?
Can I quickly preface as well? Like I did karting for a year, and did it for 2 years. And I knew there was a problem when I got accepted into some karting forum. And after like a week, I just started seeing threads of arguments about different tires, different like what are they called? The jets for the engines. And I was like, I remember saying to Anth, no wonder why it's so hard to get into this sport, because we got in like by ourselves, just looking through shit, and there was so much stuff to filter through. And then when we got there, we're like, this is the top of the mountain. And then we just see people fighting it. I'm like, man, this is insane. So now take the floor.
It's like I said, it's a competitive game. So every single person in that field, whether you've got, you know, $5,000 to spend or $500,000 to spend, everybody wants to win. The teams with the bigger budgets, you know, and the kids, I guess, that are homeschooled, they don't have to worry about work or school or homework or anything. All they get to do is just go go-karting all day, every day. And their tire budgets are more than what our yearly budget was for three go-karts. So to be competitive in that field is really tough when you get, you know, 5 or 6 of those guys doing that. It makes it really difficult to compete. And for Dalton and I, who are super competitive, we didn't really want to go away racing to know that we're going to finish 12th. That's just not how we like to go racing. And to be able to, you know, narrow that gap to the front, we have to go and commit as much as they all are, which in my opinion just wasn't possible at the time. That is a big issue with it.
So sorry,
as much as
were you guys doing? Yeah, I was just going to say, were you guys doing like Australian Karting Championship just as without a team, just as yourselves?
At the time, we were competing in the Rotax Pro Tour, and the Pro Tour actually did die for a few years. IKD, it's a huge political thing, and it depends on how you want to look at it, but IKD were pushed out. The Rotax Pro Tour was a phenomenally successful category that ran for years and years, and they did the greatest, one of the best, probably the best event I've ever been to in my life of motor racing, which was the World Championships over in Spain when Dad competed there in 2014. And it was just a phenomenal class. It was phenomenally run. You just turn up, race. It was really well done. But over the years, people were taking it more and more and more seriously. And as Tristan sort of elaborated on just then, was people were going testing 2-3 weekends in a row before the race meeting. And they would be down there for that many times. They'd throw that many sets of tires at the thing that you just get down there and you're on the back foot. Regardless of whether you're on the pace, which most of the time we were on the pace still, you would never be able to keep up because you got to worry about things like tire deg, and they've always got the setup and they always know what the tires are going to do and where the surface is going to turn to and what's going to happen to the track, because they've done that many laps around there. And it was persistent wherever you went. And it does happen in other forms of motorsport. When we were down in Phillip Island, the Gary Rogers team went down and tested, I think, a weekend or two before the ARG round. And straight out the box, all of those guys were blisteringly quick, absolutely flying. And so it doesn't really matter what form of motorsport you look at. It happens in everything. But I think at the time, karting had sort of served its purpose for us. And it's not an open wound, like you said. I have no regrets about what we did in karting and how we went about it and how it ended. Like, if anything, I'm really happy that the events took place because it's where I am right now. And we have so many great memories of karting too. So many going away, racing together, having our pit crew and having nights together and going out to, you know, we used to share around at the start of the year in Todd Road in Melbourne, the centre of Melbourne. And the Australian Open was on at the same time. We have so many memories of great nights out watching tennis, going to the racetrack the next day. We had so many good times that it's really fun. We look back on it often, and at some point for us, karting changed, and I think it's all about where you are in your life. A lot of people don't see it that way, and that's fine. Everybody's got different perspectives and different experiences which lead them to do what they do, and why they do it. I think for us, it just changed. So
I'd like to say that karting's a breeding ground. Let's not ever get that wrong.
No.
Your chances of making it in motorsport, if where you want to be, would be very slim if you don't go down the karting route. It's very rare that someone makes it that didn't go karting. And so I love karting. Karting's great. Let's like the politics of the sport, we got involved in because we'd been in it for so long. And I think, like the boys are saying, in hindsight, we probably stayed just a little bit too long. Maybe 2 or 3 years too long or something. We maybe should have looked at going somewhere else into a Hyundai XL or a production car or something like that then. But then there's timing, there's want, there's attitude, there's everything that comes with that. So, you know, some kids move out of karting when they're 14 or 15 and apply for CAMS license, Motorsport Australia license. Like I think Chaz Mostert was one of those guys. I remember writing a reference for him to get his license. You know, some kids are that good that it's just time to move on early. And, you know, you look at kids like Ricciardo and Piastri and, you know, their names that people know. They've come through karting and they were fantastic go-karters as well. So, you know, karting's a fantastic sport. Let's not get that wrong. That's a fantastic sport. You can go club racing and you can go and do it for fun and you can do that on a budget. But like you said earlier, you sit on the side of the track and you talk to that dad that's like, oh yeah, and then, you know, if we had that kart and that engine, well, that's the seed, isn't it? The seed's been planted. So it's up to where you go from there. And if you want to go to the next level, the top level of karting in Australia is one of the best levels.
100%.
But it's expensive. It's not cheap. So, you know, you just have to have that in mind.
It's physical. I think every time I go back into a go-kart, I get out and I'm like, I forgot how physical it was. And I think I've done that. It's probably a record. If I had $1 for every time I've said that, it is supremely physical. Like you pull G-forces, you feel every single bump, no suspension, no power steering. Every single thing that goes into that go-kart comes through your body. You feel every sensation. And it is a seriously challenging thing. And the one thing that, in my opinion, karting teaches better than anything else you'll ever get in a car, doesn't matter whether it's Formula 4s or XLs, is racecraft. And the awareness that you get for people around you and how to race close. Because if you bump tires and those things, 9 times out of 10, someone goes on the helmet. So it's such a respect sport. You have to have respect for next to you. And it teaches you just the most important thing about motor racing. And I think that there's a lot of people who make that mistake as well. I think a lot of people make the mistake of jumping into cars and thinking that they'll be able to figure out how to race, and like they miss it. They've missed the point. And I think that karting is just absolutely invaluable, no matter what level you are at, for teaching you about that sort of awareness, that knowledge.
I mean, you look at some of the guys that personally, like I grew up racing against Dalton as well. Dalton had like the Chaz Mosterts of the sport, and you know, I grew up with like Will Brown and the Kostecki boys, and I could go on and on and on. Like the list is longer than my arm with some of the guys that have done incredible things in motorsport. Dad's the same. He grew up racing against Craig Lowndes. You know, Craig Lowndes, Richards, I don't really know. I wasn't around. But, you know, some of the names that you're looking at in terms of some of the greatest, you know, athletes in Australian motorsport over the last 30, 40 years have come through go-karting. And for me, I still go-kart. I still race go-karts. I race KZ now in open performance. My body tries to hang on, but it doesn't. I'm not 15. But, you know, I still love to do it. And it's still something that I don't think I can ever give up. As long as I'm able to, I will. It's just so much fun. It is just honestly the most fun you'll ever have, apart from probably doing a lap at Bathurst in a BMW M3.
Well, that's a good segue then back into the production cars. But so for the uneducated person, what is different on your M3 to one that you would buy off the showroom floor? I mean, are any mods allowed?
Not much
for it
honestly.
To go racing.
So brakes are completely open. You're allowed to do whatever you want to the brakes package, as with most forms of motorsport, converting a car into a race car. They look at that as a sort of like a safety sort of thing. So you're allowed to do whatever you want with brakes. Suspension as well. So shocks and springs, you can pretty much open book. But in terms of like powertrain or the gearbox, diff, everything like that has to stay standard. We've got, what are they called? The caliper bleeders or whatever they are that sit in the engine bay that fill up the brake line. You're not even allowed to put a hole in the bonnet. Like you're literally, we've tried doing it so we can make space for it so that we can have a bigger one in there. And I was literally at the workshop last week and we had to bloody bend the bloody bonnet out because we're not allowed to put a hole in it. We literally had to bend the bonnet. I was helping the boys with the hammer putting the bloody bonnet back. And it's just crazy. Yeah, they're off the road. The interior's stripped and there's a roll cage in it and there's a fuel tank in it. Honestly, other than that, it's the exact same car that you drive out the shop. Yeah. Performance-wise, they're the same. They produce the same horsepower. They have to run stock boost. And yeah, they're on racing tires and that's it. They're an R tire, so they're actually not street legal, but the MRF, you could drive on the road and never have a problem. Like it, no one would ever pull you over for it either. They look like a road tire.
So they have tread.
They'll last longer than a road tire.
Okay.
No, it's a really good category. And I think that when you get to the level that the 6 hours at, it's run so well as well. Like it's a really I don't know what word. I've lost my bloody English over the years. But yeah, it's great. They do it really well. It's all homologated. Everybody's on the same tire. In a state level, you've got lots of different tires that people can use, a lot of selection, and commonly you'll go to a racetrack and all the people you're racing against are on different tires. But yeah, at the 6 hour, everybody's on the exact same tire. And the only difference really, especially when you're in X, where there's only really two cars, it's the M3 and the M4, which are the same car. A lot of people don't know that. There's two M2s and a Commodore as well. But as Beric said already, like last week, he said that, the Commodore is too heavy. So I think when it comes to the fight, the M2 is going to be, the M2's lighter than the M3 and the M4. The M4 and the M3 weigh just about the same. I think the M4 is about 30 kilos heavier, which is not much. But the M2 is a lot lighter, but it has a shorter wheelbase, so it will be a little bit trickier over the top of the mountain. But in a straight line, the M2 will be very quick, very quick. So I would expect that to be the fastest car there.
In relation to things like pit stops, how many sets of tires will you go through for the race, or is it just 6 hours on that one set?
You could do 6 hours on one set.
Yeah, you could. But, it's quite a hard compound, so you could get away with doing if you were able to manage your tires. But
I would say we do it it's a speed-based thing. Obviously, as a tire degrades, no matter how hard it is, it obviously gets slower. So we do it to sort of keep speed. There's so many safety cars in the 6 hour, being that there's so many cars on the track. So it's bound to be a safety car at some point. So you sort of just put tires on it so that you've got a better set, you've got more speed, so that, if there's a late safety car, you've got the best chances of getting the speed out of the car. And you go back down the grid though, the slower cars will not change tires. I'd probably say around the B classes. I think below that, it'd be a waste of time changing tires just because they don't sort of have the power that the X class and the A class cars have to burn up the tires. Like an 86, for an example, you'd be able to do 12 hours on one set of tires. And yeah, I think we really just do it just because it's the best way to keep the speed really in the car. But yeah, also just in case something is wrong with the tires. But
you've got
they're good tires.
Yeah. You've got a time pit stop too, so you've got to be stopped. I think it's for about a minute. So
90 seconds.
Yeah, 90 seconds. And so what you've got to understand is we don't have a boom set up, and we don't have jacks under the car and all that sort of stuff that shoots the car in the air, and guys come in with rattle guns. They've got to run out with the jack one side of the car up and do the tire change that way. So, and it's pretty much just with a rattle gun sort of a electric drill thing. So
impact driver.
Yeah, it's an impact driver. So it's a time consuming thing to do. So if the opportunity allows itself, you might get one side done. You wouldn't get all 4 of them done in a pit stop, I can imagine. If you decide to do that, you'd be there for a while. But you might do one side if the time allows.
At the same time, you're doing a driver change as well. So that's and it's 90 seconds from when you enter the pit lane to when you exit. So you've got that whole transition through the lane as well. And so you got so everything is, you probably just do one side at a time just because it takes 90 seconds normally just for the pit stop itself. So you do end up spending more time in the pit lane than what is the minimum just because you're changing the tires. But I guess it's just a risk sort of thing that you got to take for the race and the strategy. Safety cars obviously play into it too.
How many?
Sorry, you go.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I was just going to say, I'd say probably more so in terms of strategy-wise. The fuel is probably more important, I'd say, in a 6-hour endurance race. The fuel strategy, managing that fuel to perfection, generally about an hour in our cars. It's pretty close to an hour. So we know that we can gauge sort of our driver time as per our fuel load as well. It's pretty hard to navigate that as well, driver time and the tires. Yeah. But altogether, it makes for a really exciting race because there's just so many different strategies going on. And like Dalton said, there's 70 cars on the grid this year, which means you're likely to have, just based on recent years, at least eight safety cars.
Yeah. That's about 11 last year.
There was 11 last year, but it could be more than that because we're also seeing for the first time in 2 years some of these race cars going on the mountain or being used. Some cars have only just been finished. So, I think reliability plays just as big a role in the whole conversation.
There's also compulsory stops as well. So X class, we get a penalty just because we're X, which is strange. Don't know why they do it. We are the top class, but they do decide to try and penalize X class to bring them back towards the A's. So we get 6 compulsory stops, whereas every other car has 4 compulsory stops. And so also something else that you guys might be interested in viewer guide as well is that you're not allowed to do anything to the car as long as fuel is going into it. So when fuel is going into the car, no one's allowed to touch the car. You're allowed to do a driver change at the same time, but that's it. So as soon as fuel is done, then you jack the car up and change the tires. So if you're doing the 2 things at the same time, they may not work out. So, so when you're watching the race and you're seeing that sort of stuff happening, that's why it's just a safety sort of thing. So
they should make you guys PR for this race, man. You guys have sold me on this race in like 5 minutes.
I love it. It's a great. Can't wait.
My video.
What did they say? It was 16 manufacturers and 32 different cars or something like. And the great thing about production cars is that anyone can do it. You can, and it doesn't. There's no allegiance that you need to anything. It's not like you're buying a purpose-built race car. You can go into a Mazda dealership and buy a Mazda 3, or you can go into a used car lot and grab an old Camry from 04 or something like that. Whatever your preference. Like you're a Mercedes fan, you love Mercedes. Go and buy a C63 or something. It's the great thing is that everybody that's there with their car have their own reasons for having that car. It's not because that's all they could get. It's because I always wanted to race a Mercedes, so now I'm racing a Mercedes. Or I've always wanted to race a BMW, so now I'm racing an M3, So, and everybody has their different reasons for doing it. And some people are just going there to have fun and enjoy something with their friends that they just love with a passion. Other people are going there to win. And it doesn't matter what background you're from. I think that this race is the best thing right now in Australian motorsport, just because of the level of background that comes to it and how many people with different experiences in life and in motor racing bring to the event. It's just refreshing. You just walk into the pit bay on the Friday morning and everyone's smiling and talking to each other. It's such a great experience, a great vibe. I've never experienced that in my motor racing career, where everybody's just so excited to be there and so happy, and it's just such a great place to be at that time.
That's really well said. Yeah, sorry.
So obviously you got your bigger budget teams that, your BMW M3s, your A1, A2 cars that are potentially going for the outright win, but there's guys up and down the grid, like Dalton said, that are there to have fun. We got we got Suzuki Swifts in E-Class cars. Stevie McHugh and his boys, Hoppy and that's, they turn up to Queensland production cars just to have a ball. And their budget's, minuscule compared to what, some of the other teams might be. But they do it because they love it. And this class gives them an opportunity to go and do that and turn laps around Bathurst. And the speed difference between us and a BMW M3, the BMW M3s and the Suzuki Swifts is 40 seconds a lap. We're lapping them almost every 3-4 laps or something. I'm pretty bad at maths. That's why I drive a car. But So
sorry, what's a good lap time for your car? Sorry.
SVG did a 2:25.8 last year for qualifying. 25. No one got near that during the race. I think a race pace is about a 2:27 mid around there. Okay. They're significantly slower, but again, the tire, I'm spinning on my chair. It's a very hard compound, so it slows all the cars down naturally. Mid-corner speed is way down in comparison to being on something like a Michelin Slick or something that TCR or GT3s are on. And I think the straight line speed is obviously still there, but speeds are just significantly reduced through all the corners. And so it slows the class down. And I think it sort of brings everybody closer as well. If there was more grip to be utilized, I think that the X-Class cars would be way faster than the other cars because you don't have as much power. Obviously, the more grip you have, the more the car will bog down. But yeah. Did that answer your question?
Should SVG be given a one-hand handicap?
It's going to be interesting. Obviously, this year we've got a lot more drivers going down there, a lot more supercar drivers. I think it's going to be really close, honestly, this year. I think it's going to be a really good race to watch.
Oh, no, just got to jump in there. We tried to disadvantage him last year. He rocked up with a broken collarbone and broken ribs. And he had tied behind his back. I think he was blindfolded for one of his stints too, and still got him on.
And look, the running went on at the start of last year with broken ribs and a broken collarbone. So no, we don't want to take a hand off him.
Good call.
We actually want him fully fit because he mightn't be.
No, look, he's obviously at the peak of his performance, and there's a lot of great drivers rocking up on at the 6 hour as well, which makes it pretty challenging, but just as exciting to watch and be a part of as well. So, to be able to race against guys like Will Davidson and Anton De Pasquale, Shane Van Gisbergen at this point in our career, it's unreal. It's something that we probably never thought we'd ever be doing, let alone doing it this soon in a feature race at an endurance race at Bathurst, So in my opinion, the Bathurst 1000 is going to be the pinnacle of Australian motorsport. But the Bathurst 6 hour is probably taken over as, I'd say, the second most prestigious race on an Australian motor racing calendar, just due to the interest and excitement of some of these drivers jumping on board.
Well said. Obviously, endurance racing is definitely there's a lot of luck that's involved. Not luck, but you need a bit of luck to go your way to obviously get the result at the end of the day. With everything going to plan during the race, where do you think you can end up? Is a podium a realistic
I'll let Steve answer that one. He hasn't spoken much, so I keep answering. So I'll let Steve talk about that.
We all know what we're going to Bathurst for.
Yeah.
I've always had a motto that I never went to Bathurst to make up the numbers. And if I ever felt like that's where my career was heading, then I was always happy to walk away from that. And my last Bathurst 1000 in 2008, I just honestly felt like I was there making up the numbers, and hence why it was my last one. So, to go to Bathurst, it's a special place, and it means everything to every Australian driver and some around the world now too, to want to one day A, race at Bathurst, but B, be on the podium at Bathurst. And I've been lucky enough to be on the podium as a place getter there 3 times. But nothing would give me more pleasure than to stand up there with Dalton and Tristan and to do that with my boys, first, second or third, it doesn't matter. So look, to answer your question honestly, we're going to have a crack.
Yeah.
I've never shied away from a challenge, and we're not going to now. We've got good people in our corner, working strategy and that for us this weekend. And I believe that if we do our job right and we do things as we should, we can put ourselves there at the end of the day. And like last year, other than an intercooler problem, we were in that top 3 fight all day.
Okay. Yeah.
The level this year has probably gone a little bit again because there's so many supercar drivers driving this year. But I don't shy away from a challenge, and I believe we've got the talent, and I believe we've got the knowledge and the know-how of this car to get it somewhere there. And hopefully in that last hour and 15 minutes, we're in with a shot. We've got a good car, good tyres, and we can go and give it a crack.
No, the preparation too, I like to think as well. I think that we've been working really hard behind the scenes and in preparation for the weekend. I think we as a family have all been putting in the work, and the team, obviously. The team put in so much work to get the cars ready, and like they've got such a job right now, having 4 cars that they're running, plus the Trans Am car. Like the work that they're putting in, the hours that they're putting in getting ready for this race, like it can never be overlooked. And I don't think I ever get enough credit because, you know, you talk about racing, everybody just sees the name on the side of the door and think that's the only person that really matters. But man, I tell you right now, if we were looking after this car, there's no way it would be turning up to Bathurst because it would be in pieces and we'd have no idea how to put it back together.
I'd rock up to a little Hot Wheels car or something.
Are you telling me there's more to it than just bending the bonnet?
The only thing I'm good at is bending shit. Trust me.
Unintentionally.
They're gonna try and bring home the chocolates.
And that's awesome. It's good to hear. It's good to hear people have a bit of conviction and they're willing to kind of stake their claim. I love that. Before you guys go, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Trans Am as well, because it's obviously, you know, another endeavor that you guys have moved into. So Dalton, you've moved into Turtle Wax Trans Am this year. How have you found the transition? And was there anything about the category that kind of took you by surprise?
Honestly, the big thing that's really taken me about surprise is the car and the difference between the M3. Both of them are supremely difficult to drive. In the exception of the M3, you have a lot of assistance with the braking, particularly. And the Trans Am, you've got aero. So you miss something with the Trans Am, but you gain something back. And like we were taking turn 1 at Phillip Island at 210 k's an hour, and it's a 90-degree bend. Like it's crazy fast. In an M3, I'd imagine you'd be 50 k's slower through there without the downforce. Like you go over the rises in the M3 and the car lifts away, and you just do not get that sensation in a Trans Am. Like even though they're not like a GT3 car, they're still on the ground and they're stuck. The category's fantastically run. It's run so well that if we had have been in any other category and had the problems that we've had already this year, we wouldn't have completed a race. We turned up to Tasmania and we got 3 laps in and we had a complete diff failure. And if it wasn't for the Trans Am guys having their trucks there and their parts and having a spare diff there, we would have never have done a single more lap that weekend. That would have been the end of our weekend before it even started. We've had issues at Phillip Island that we had to replace. We've had that many issues, and the organization that they have in getting people that have crashes and everything back on track. Like we've seen cars that if it was any other category, that'd be the end of their weekend. They may not even get to the next race, but they've literally managed to get their car ready for the next race the next day overnight. It's a testament to how the cars are made and for how they've designed everything to be done, but it's also for the category for having that preparation there and for enabling people to have access to all of these parts and all these things without having to fork out so much money to have that on hand themselves and having the space to carry it all. And I think ARG do a really good job as well of organizing the category and the weekends. Like it's first class. You never feel like you're not going to get on track on time, or like it's a really relaxing thing to just turn up to a racetrack and your only focus is about when you're going to be on the, or not when you're going to be on the track, but being in the car. And I think it's a really well-run thing. And I think Motorsport Australia do a great job with it as well. I think overall, all the parts and all the components that make Trans Am what it is, it's good. And the racing is good. He's got the guys at the front that are a really good benchmark. You got Nathan Hearn at the front, who was, awesome last year. Like, there's no other way of saying it. Him and Seaton last year put on a show multiple times. Even I remember watching the race at Sydney when them two and Nash were racing, and like they're loud. They look fantastic. They're so presentable, and they're real race cars too. And I think that it's a really cool category. I think you hear them. My first race, we missed out on a race. We had a broken wheel stud and we had to replace them all. And unfortunately, we didn't get out in time on the Sunday morning. And I remember standing on the pit wall, watching them go down the back straight at Queensland Raceway, and you hear the resonating sound of those cars. Like, man, that is cool. Like, they sound like NASCARs, man. They're awesome sound.
I've got to add to that, standing on the top level at Phillip Island and having the sound echo off the building. And then you got, I think, how many were there? 27 or 28 cars just, and you're just like, oh, this is cool, and like Dalton said, they just look unreal and they sound fantastic. And everybody, for the most part, has put in a lot of effort to make their cars, look like real race cars, how the categories should be. And I almost wish that people in other categories took as much pride and effort into presenting the cars the way that they do in TA2 or Trans Ams, I should say. Sorry.
I was going to commend you guys because your car does look mint. Like there are not many things that you can control in motorsport, but how your car is presented is one thing that you have full control over. And I always feel like if a team misses if, like, all things considered, if you can get a pretty car out there, it does nothing, does no harm for your team. And I think when especially in T2, so many of those cars are really good looking, because that's the one thing we're all humans and we like things that are shiny and look nice, So when I first saw the T2s come out, I was like, number one, these things sound awesome. The racing is super close. And this was before I even knew sort of anything about the category in terms of all the same chassis, all the same engines, just different bodywork, then we spoke to Nathan, and he was telling us about how the tires work and all that kind of stuff. But the show that they put on, I feel sorry for Supercars if they're racing with Trans Ams on the same weekend, because the sound of those things is amazing, and they look, and they are the business. And I really think that now that they've packaged them together with the S5000s and the TCRs, that whole package that they're now presenting on Stan Sports has a bit of everything. But I think the Trans Ams are sort of the business of that week, and they are an awesome category.
Yeah, I think it's growing into something too. Like, even in America, it has regular basis every single weekend. The Trans Ams or TA2 race there. Like, they used to race TA1 and TA2, but they've become so big in America that they've had to separate the two races. TA2 gets 70 plus entrants at Sebring, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
And it's crazy. Like, and the same thing's happening here. You can't get a car in Australia. There's a bloody wait list, 30 people along. Like, it's growing into such a great category. And the thing that's amazing about it is that it is like, it's not cheap. You can't go and work a normal job and go and spend your weekends racing Trans Am. Like, it is still expensive. It's motor racing. Motor racing is expensive, but in the spectrum of what motor racing is, it's cheaper than everything else. It's even remotely close to that level of performance. And yeah, like you said, they're just a package. They are such a great package. And
I think as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, not Tristan, Dalton. How do you think that you can personally improve further in the car? You're obviously you've had a bit of bad luck to start the season. You're still sitting in 8th in the championship, which is a testament to you when you're driving. But how do you see yourself, or what are you looking to do to improve and kind of get, or to move further up the field over the course of the year?
Easiest thing to say is at Phillip Island, I wasn't fit enough. I made that mistake in the first race, and I lost a gearbox in the last race. But at the same time, I wasn't fit enough. I know that. I felt it. I felt it when I was in the car. I felt myself getting exhausted, and the focus level at that level, to be racing at that level and to be making your way up forward, if you lapse for that brief second that I did, then that's what happens. And the game is hard, and those guys are good, and you're racing so close and wheel to wheel, and it does take your concentration out, and you lapse. And so being fit in those cars, like, they don't have windows, and you wouldn't believe me when I tell you, but that thing gets that hot in there. It's hotter than the M3 with the windows up. It is an absolute sauna in that thing when you are racing, especially when you are concentrating so hard and you're sweating and you're not really thinking so much about your breathing, and you can get carried away, and it can really pull you back. And if you're not fit enough, you can't do it. So something that I have been working on recently is just getting fit, running more, trying as hard as I can to get my body to go further and more, and trying to make sure that I can survive, not just 25-minute races, but multiple of them, plus the 6-hour race that I'm doing this weekend. It is very physical, and you got to have the mental strength to do it as well. And practicing, making sure that your mind is right, making sure that you are solely focused on what's happening on the track and nothing else around. And yeah, honestly, it's something that you just got to chip away at. You got to work with your team, understand the cars more, figure out what does what and which changes make the car better or worse, and paying attention to what's happening around you. We've got the great, what would be the word? Luxury of having every single person that we're racing against in the same tent. So we get to see what people are doing around us. We get to learn what changes they're making to the car and see how they're going about it and why. You get to go out and race against them and see how those sorts of things went. And so I think if for the whole thing, everybody learns something from somebody else as well. And and I think it's really cool thing.
We see 2 Ellery Racing Trans Ams in 2023?
Look, hope so. I know Berwick's got another one on order. Personally, I don't know what his plans are with that Trans Am car, but I mean, it's natural evolution to want to grow. I'd love to be able to give them the opportunity to race them. Like I said, I think they're probably the coolest race cars I've ever seen, bar maybe F1. The old school F1 cars going around Albert Park, and probably the supercars. But they're just a traditional race car, and that's what I'd love to be a part of. I reckon I'd suit the category quite well in the car, but at this point in time, I'm focused on the 6-hour, and I'm focused on we're competing in the Australian Production Car Championship as well. So that's got all my focus at the moment. Between the 6-hour and the series as well, I'm going to be pretty busy doing that. Yeah. So if obviously given the opportunity to race the Trans Am, I'd absolutely love to. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. At the moment, it's actually pretty cool watching Dalton drive them. I'm getting itchy. Like I want to be out there, and I don't want to do it. I couldn't imagine how Dad's felt, for 15 plus years that we were racing go-karts. That he would have just, I want to get out there and compete. And even the first year, Dalton and I jumping back into race cars, and you could see how hungry he was to get into it. So I now know what that's like from a spectator point of view, wanting to get involved. So maybe one day.
I've got a good pitch for you guys. If you run 2 cars, do inverted colors.
That's what I said.
And then get matching cross earrings, I reckon. I think that's how the team's got to go.
We got to get the cross earrings.
Yeah. Well, we could have 3 Trans Am cars and have like one, the black, white, and gold, and one like gold, white, and black.
I love it. Aesthetics is everything, boys. Aesthetics is everything.
Then we can really talk about who's the best Ellery.
Just to finish off, Steve. Obviously, we've spoken about your career a little bit tonight, but then a lot more about your sons racing and then you racing with your sons. Just to finish off, what's the sense of pride that you have? Obviously, seeing your sons pursue a career or a sport that you're so passionate about, and then obviously, if and when they were to hopefully make it to supercars, if that's a reality, I mean, what feeling would that give to you, considering how much you've put into obviously their careers as well?
Look, from a personal point of view, whether I was driving or not, I love standing on the side of the track and watching them, and I love watching them go about their business, and it blows me away. It really does. I used to be fast once. I know what it's like to be fast, and it just blows me away to watch them out there doing what they do and driving the cars how they drive them, and there's a sense of pride comes with that as well. But again, as my answer to the 6 hour before and what we're going there for, I'm not going to hide the fact that both Dalton and Tristan want to race supercars one day, and they want to do a Bathurst 1000. So the TA2 is not an accident; it's deliberate. I genuine believe it's a starting ground and a good stepping ground into a V8. They don't have the 640 horsepower that a supercar does, but they have about 540, I think it is, and they're 4-speed, so they're a bit different. But at the same time, they're a V8. They're fast. They're heavy, and they teach you how to drive a car that style. The front under trays, that's got a decent little lip on the bottom of it, so there's a bit of aero there. There's a bit of aero at the back. So it certainly gives them the grounding that if they ever get an opportunity to go and have a test in a Super 2 car or a supercar or something like that, it'll give them the grounding to go there and be able to drive that car properly and give the test what it's supposed to be, and to put their name on the Australian landscape. So, I think most people in Australian motorsport know who Dalton and Tristan are. But it's time for them now to grow as drivers and show them that they've got the goods, they're reliable, they're fast enough, and that they can take that step into supercars. And whether that is full-time Super 2 driving, whether it's full-time supercar driving, or whether it's just a co-drive at the 1000, that's the goal. And look, I'm proud of them no matter what they do. As Dalton said before, everything can end tomorrow as well. So to me, the pride is seeing them out there doing what they love and seeing them smiling, enjoying themselves and loving it. But if they made the 1000 grid one day, then that would be the ultimate prize. It's the ultimate prize in Australian motorsport and one of the most ultimate prizes in the world. So it's not easy to get there, but we're giving it a crack.
That's awesome to hear. Steve, Dalton, Tristan, thanks we really appreciate, obviously, the amount of time that you spent talking to us tonight. We're pushing 90 minutes. Anytime
appreciate you guys having patience and letting us. I was just
it's always good when you've got people that are willing to talk. I mean,
we could go on and on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's always the beauty of a good conversation, really. I mean, obviously, really, the amount of how candidly you've spoken about obviously the challenges and the realities of the sport, but then also the stakes to the claim of what you want to achieve in the sport. It's really refreshing. I mean, but there's a lot of people that these days will kind of say, if everything works, this might be what we're able to achieve. But really impressed with everything that you've said tonight, and particularly with the 6 hours this weekend. We wish you all the best to obviously go out there and to achieve the goal that you want to as a family, and moving forward as Ellery Racing and your progression, hopefully up the ranks. You've definitely got a few more fans tonight. So we wish you the best of luck moving forward, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and the Racing Line podcast for having us as well. You boys have been awesome, great hosts, and we love tuning in and listening in. So I think you're gaining 3 more fans, and however more we bring as well. So we're so grateful for having us on.
I mean, for us, when we sort of started this whole idea of having this podcast, we just wanted to sort of share some real stories of Australian motorsport that I don't really hear, the stuff away from the glitz and glamour of supercars, something a bit more real. And with nights like this where we get to talk to you and you take us into sort of your lives, your family dynamic, we can see you guys sort of bantering with each other, which is number one what we live for anyway. But for you guys to share that with us is really special. And we wish you nothing but the best for the weekend. I'll actually be watching. I will be watching something that I didn't expect to be watching now this Easter, which is awesome. So thank you guys very much.
2 hours of Bathurst at Easter. What could be better?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night. Cheers.
Thanks
Cheers.
very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.